I am a victim of, sexual abuse from the uncle and the houseboy. All little girls look up to their father. They have an unspoken admiration. They're daddy's girls. And the emotional damage is far greater than physical damage, I feel. We were not good for each other. Two good people, but not necessarily good for each other. I didn't have the tools or the ability to break free and say, stop, this is not okay for me.
But hold on, did he pursue you or you pursued him?
And then eventually a nurse walked into the room, picked up the baby from the cradle, put it on my chest, and I was like, what are you? What is this thing? I felt like my baby was more of an alien.
Did you ever tell your husband, ex-husband, that you were looking outside and at someone?
And I think I also put a little bit of pressure on myself. It was like, I'm 29. I've had a slew of terrible men, boyfriends, whatever in my life. I live on the 5th floor. And I really visualize myself jumping off the 5th floor. This is what I want to do. It's hard to say, but I am a victim of sexual abuse from the uncle and the houseboy. मैंने suicide कर लिया.
I was alone with the guy in apartment. He entered.
I've been raped.
Welcome to Unfiltered. The stories we were told not to tell.
Seeing this particular lady, every night she would come to my window and call me.
I was diagnosed with the most shocking news of my life, that was the breast cancer.
We are going to talk about emotional abandonment, identity, escape, relationships, and what really means to come back to yourself.
The girls have been taught, don't go out at night, don't wear short clothes, don't do this. Why aren't the boys being taught?
You're working, you're taking care of the kids, you have to be a great wife, you have to be great and successful, sexy woman.
You're not just together holding each other sexually.
We, as women, biologically wired to protect, to nourish, to nurture. We are meant to give life.
Cancer didn't shake you. You shook cancer.
I
think that respect for myself would have also bought me higher self-esteem.
आज मैंने अपने ऊपर 8 महीने इन्वेस्ट किए हैं और मैं आपके साथ यहाँ पे बैठी हूँ, तो सोचो मैंने 8 साल अपने ऊपर इन्वेस्ट किए होते तो मैं कहाँ बैठी होती. Welcome to Unfiltered, the stories we were told not to tell. Every woman has a story. Some are easy to speak about, and others, they stay buried in silence for years, and sometimes for decades. Today's episode is a powerful place to begin. Our guest today was born in India, but was brought to Dubai just a few days after birth. Her early childhood changed dramatically when she lost her father at a very young age. Soon after, her family went through legal and financial struggles that shook their entire sense of stability. But the most difficult chapter in her life happened quietly, behind closed doors. As a child, she experienced abuse from people who were supposed to keep her safe. At an age when a child is learning what the world is supposed to look like, those experiences shaped the way she understands loves, trust, and relationships. And for many years, those patterns continued into adulthood. Until one moment in her life that forced everything to stop. What followed was a long and difficult journey of rebuilding her life, understanding her past, breaking those patterns, and slowly learning how to heal. So today, on Unfiltered, let's welcome Zainab. Thank you so much, Zainab, for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Sapna.
You're very welcome. So, Zainab, let's, before we dive deep into your story, please tell me where you're from.
I'm from India, Mumbai, born in Mumbai.
Okay.
But pretty much had most of my life lived here for 44 years.
Fair enough. And Zainab, your name suggests that you're Muslim. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Okay.
Yes. So I am born into Islam, but in particular, I don't know if you've heard of Boris.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a lot in Africa, actually.
Absolutely.
Khoja and Boras, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Khojas are one type and then the Boras are a different type.
Yes.
They're quite similar, but don't ask me what the technicalities are.
I think I know the technicalities.
You do?
Yeah,
okay, good
yeah.
on you.
Yeah.
So I'm culturally not that well equipped, but yes.
Okay.
So I come from the Bori community. And my mom in particular is very Bori in the sense that she's practicing, she's part of the community.
Okay.
She enjoys being part of the community. She supports the community in whichever way she can. And her network, even in Dubai, is quite strong when it comes to the Boris and things.
Okay. So there's a lot of Boris here in Dubai then?
There seems to be.
Okay.
Yeah, there's quite a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me how was your childhood? Tell me more about, how was being raised in Dubai, from making friends to being at school to, everything. Just tell me more.
Dubai is such a relaxing place, honestly. I never had any kind of experience, difficulties growing up in the city. Always felt safe right from the very beginning. Still is safe. As a woman today, you can still walk around at any time in the day or night and be completely relaxed. What they've done with the city is incredible. I remember 44 years ago, through pictures that there was just one building, the Trade Center, standing tall, and the rest of it was all desert. And you still see these really cute videos, of the 1970s and the 1980s where you see these big expanses on Sheikh Zayed Road and nothing was ever there. And it's been a joy, honestly, to see the city grow. And I feel like the buildings went up as I grew. My age progressed and the country's age progressed almost simultaneously. And it was simple. The days were humble. The days were simple. It was a lot of family time. I don't think materialistic things existed, but there were things like the Chicago Beach Club.
Okay.
And I remember spending a lot of time there. We used to go there as a family. And life was good. It was safe. It was sheltered. We lived in a bubble. We really did live in a bubble.
And why is that? You've gone through a lot, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, I mean, why do I feel a state? Maybe it's just lived experience. After a certain while, when you've seen it all, or at least when you feel like you've seen a lot in life, I think there's a sense of maturity that comes in, which naturally happens with age and growing up. And there are stories that we tell ourselves. There is a way in which we speak in our own minds. And I think we know, at least I do, I know I have the skill set and the tools to be able to calm myself down, take a step back, look at things again, and find that resilience to keep moving ahead. It's not always like this. I'm not perfect. And there are times and days and years where I have been through severe depression, anxiety, and literally my parents will have to come home, pick me up, or move into my home, stay with me for a few days. So I'm blessed that my family is around me here in Dubai, and we're a very tight unit. We love each other quite a bit, so we're there for each other also a lot when we need it.
Fair enough. All right, so let me get back to your childhood then. What happened at a certain age? You mentioned a few of the things that happened in your life. Let's start from the beginning. Please share us where the trauma triggered for you.
It's heavy questions, right?
Yeah.
I think my absolute earliest childhood memory is of me sitting on the floor on a very comfy, furry carpet. And I had a Barbie coloring book. And my dad was there. This is my biological dad. And he was very talented artistically. He was a trained architect, and he hails from IIT in Kharagpur, India. Bit of a genius, honestly.
Okay.
And he was my greatest influence, as would be, right? Your mom and your dad are your greatest influences in life.
Of course.
So coming back to the early memory was us sitting at on the floor, and I was coloring my Barbie coloring book and filling it in with yellow and reds and pinks. And my dad walked over to me and he sat down and he said, "Why don't you add details into this?" And I remember looking at him. I must have been all of 6 years old, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I said, "What do you mean?" And he taught me. I remember distinctly the flower. And he took red and he put lines into it and he put little dots of pollen into it. And then we filled it up in yellow. And I was impressed. I was like, oh, I've never actually looked at coloring or drawing or filling in a basic coloring book like this before. That's my early memory of him. And then my next memory of him, honestly, is when he died. And I was 8 years old then. And the next memory I have of him was when he was on a stretcher, being put into an ambulance and being taken away. And those are the only two memories I actually have of my father.
Well,
What is interesting is, even after all these years, I still remember his scent, his smell.
wow.
And I can smell it even now.
What was the diagnosis, and what was the actual disease that he was
I'm
going
going to
through?
try and remember the facts that I can. And
Yeah.
these are all stories that my mom told me later in life, right? I don't remember as an 8-year-old. But I believe he was diagnosed with jaundice,
Okay.
but it was actually hepatitis B. And so the treatment that was administered initially was not necessarily the right treatment. And whatever medical complications took place thereafter, I wasn't fully aware of them. And I'm glad I wasn't, honestly. I don't think any 8-year-old child needs to know the details. And I have very effectively blocked out a lot of my memory. I think that was the way in which I protected myself. And my 11-year-old brother at the time, I was 8 and he was 11, he was older, obviously, and aware enough of the things that were going on around us. And he stepped into this from boy to man role all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
As you naturally do. It's like, now I've got a mom and I've got a young sister and I kind of need to take care of them. So, yeah, the overall childhood that I had was difficult. Interesting. It's never easy for anybody at any age to lose a parent, but I don't think we had enough time. I don't think I had enough maturity. And it all happened. He fell into coma and I never saw him awake again. He passed away. Again, I don't know the timeline. I've blocked it all out, but he eventually passed away while he was in coma. My mom does tell me interesting stories about how he woke up from coma briefly for a few minutes to deliver some information and some facts. And I wasn't there. And even if I was there, I don't really remember it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. How was your mom and dad's relationship at the time?
I'm going to be honest. My mom and dad had a difficult relationship. Whatever 8 years that I saw through my own eyes, it wasn't lilies and roses or anything like that. I do remember difficulties in the home. I remember arguments. I remember fights. I remember feeling scared. As individuals, they were both, or my dad was and my mom is, really beautiful human beings, but sometimes just the combination of two people isn't right. As parents individually, they were both fantastic parents. They really were. I remember my dad loving me a lot. I remember my mom being around and loving us a lot as well. At the time, she was a teacher in a school, and then she moved into another field of life and medical insurance, I believe. And my dad was, although he was a trained architect, I believe he had a business that he set up in Knife Road.
Okay.
A very, very old Dubai.
Yeah.
And it was a paint shop. It was the Jothan Paint Shop or something like that. The memories that I have of the relationship my mom and dad have are not the best. And as children, we did feel the turbulence. As children, all children feel everything. We feel the energies. We see what's going on in front of our eyes. And it does impact our lives. It definitely does. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And so, business you mentioned. So when your father passed away, did you guys, any of you had a chance to take over the business, support in any way? How did financially, were you okay financially at the time?
No, we were not. I don't know what really happened, but I remember the feeling of what happened. There was some issues in my dad's paint shop, as I call it, in that business. Distinct painful memory of when the court, or the so-called court, I don't even know if that was true or false, they came to our apartment and said, we need to check everything that you have and all the assets, so to speak. And we need to put everything on a list. And I believe the list was extensive. And I remember my mom's car at the time being on the list. And then they were walking around the entire house trying to find these assets. And my most beloved Barbie house, it was a plastic house. It had 3 floors, and all my dolls stayed in it. And I played and played and played the Barbie, I remember. And I remember them standing there looking at my dollhouse and putting it on the list. I couldn't comprehend why they wanted my dollhouse. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Oh.
And then I remember them going over to my little Casio piano and putting that on the list. And I still don't understand that system or that method. It is what it is. I don't think I've wanted to open up those, those structures and systems that were in place back then. But it felt like after my dad passed away, my entire life was being taken away from me. Everything. And my mom is an extremely resilient woman. She showed resilience then. She must have been all of maybe 32 or 35 when this happened to her. Quite young.
Yeah, of course.
She's incredible. She protected us. She protected us from external family members. There was a debate if we were going to live in India or we were going to come back to the UAE. She made the right decision by saying, no, I'm taking my kids back to the environment they know, the school that they know, the friends they know, the life that they know. There were false promises from family that they would support us financially. It sounded like a relief that there would be some money in the bank to get us going, but it was all false promises. Nothing ever came to my mom. Until date, we haven't seen any of it. And my mom didn't sit down and cry. She didn't give up. She's like, I know how to work. I have a job and I'm going to just keep pushing forward. And her main mission in life was to make enough money to ensure that both her kids got the best education possible.
Nice.
Because she married young. I think she was engaged by 16 and probably married by 19 or something like that. And she never had the opportunity to go and get a college education. And I can understand why giving her children the best education was so important.
Yeah. How did that impact you when, if your mom was obviously taking care of the bills, she wasn't probably home often. Did you have a nanny at the time, or how were you raised then, right? If you and your brother both are, in fact.
I was raised by the wolves.
Wow. Yeah.
And there was a lovely nanny. I think there was, or maybe she came a lot later in life. But the only few people that I remember who were in my home as soon as my dad passed away was an aunt who was lovely. She was delightful, happy, funny.
That's from your dad's side?
No, I think from my mom's side.
From your mom's side.
Yes.
Okay.
And she moved into the home, and she used to look after us for some time.
Nice.
And she eventually got married after maybe a year or so. I'm not sure of the timeline. And then the uncle came into the picture as well.
Okay.
And there was a houseboy. Back in the days I was growing up. And, like you rightfully said, my mom had other responsibilities. She had other duties. She had to put food on the table. There were days when my brother was in charge of rationing the chicken that we had, and it had to last over an entire week. Or maybe there wasn't enough milk in the fridge, or maybe we were out of bread or eggs or whatever it may be. And I remember those things taking place in our home. But it wasn't my responsibility.
Why is that?
I was too young.
Too young.
I was too young to know better. And I think I was dealing with something else myself.
Okay.
I was dealing with the loss of my dad. My safety net was gone all of a sudden. It was over. I also think I blamed myself in some twisted way that I was responsible for the death of my father. Who knows? I don't know what was going on in my head at that time. So yes, coming back to the people that were around us, it was the aunt, it was the uncle, it was the houseboy. My mom was also present as much as she could be. I remember crying every time she had to leave the house and go to work.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just crying, it was a full-blown meltdown and a tantrum where I would be pulling on her to keep her in the house, but she really had to go. She had to go to work. And those were very painful days for me because I was afraid that my parent would die again, that I would never see them again and they wouldn't come home. And I think eventually I stopped doing that. I don't know when and how and where. And the people that my mom trusted to raise me or to look after me, maybe it wasn't raising so much, but to look after me for a few hours when I came back from school, or, you go over to your aunt's place to spend the night. They were not very nice people.
Okay, how so?
They were not very nice men. The Me Too movement that has been such a phenomenon around.
Yeah.
And people have only now just started talking about it. And it's hard to say, but I am a victim of, sexual abuse from the uncle and the houseboy. I was too young to tell anyone.
How old were you at the time again? 8?
It happened between 8 and 9, I want to say. And this is my defense coming in, which is going to say, it is what it is, right? And when I speak to a lot of women today that have had experiences like this, in India, it's ever so common for this to happen. I've noticed all of us women turn around and say, well, it is what it is. Let's get on with it. I went through it too. So what? But I feel like that's just the defense that we use to
Protect yourself.
protect ourselves.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. I wasn't able to talk about this till I was 22. I couldn't go to my mom and tell her, hey, uncle is doing this to me. Is that weird? Is that normal? I wasn't able to go to my brother even and say, houseboy is doing this to me. Is that even normal? I just let it happen. I also felt in a way that I didn't want to put additional burden onto anybody else. We just lost our dad. I could see people were running around helter-skelter trying to make a living or, bring calm back into the home. So who was I to say, hey, what about me? This is what's happening to me. So I kept repeating the same story in my head. It's okay. This is life. It's normal. Or is it? Or is it not? Shouldn't tell anyone. I've been told not to tell anyone. I've been told this is our secret.
Who told you that? Uncle or both?
Both probably.
Yeah. I'm going to just ask very deep questions. If you're not comfortable, please stop me. When was the first time? Like, what was your memories? And who was the first? Uncle or the houseboy?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Don't remember.
The art of blocking things out.
Of course. Of course.
I know it happened. I know I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
I do have visions and visuals that I live with till date. But I don't know which came first or which came second or who did what and who did when. I know when and where each of these incidences would take place. One was either in my own home, and one was at the uncle's house. But it's a blurred memory. I'm not able to give you precise moments. Even if I can, to be honest with you, I'm choking. It's hard.
No, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
And how long did that last for?
I think it went on for about a year. Yeah, between 8 and 9.
Were you hurting?
Physically, no.
Okay.
At least I don't think I was. But emotionally, I think I was very confused. And the emotional damage is far greater than physical damage, I feel. So what I remember today is losing pieces of myself along the way.
Did you tell them to stop?
No way. I was too afraid to use my voice to say stop. I wish I could have. I wish I had gone to my mom and said, this is happening. But this is where, as a mother now, I'm changing the dialogue with my children.
Yeah.
I continuously sit them down to the point where they think I'm strange and weird. But I sat them down a couple of months ago and I said, this happened to me. That is why I keep telling you.
What you told them?
To come and tell me.
No.
And they're 2 boys. Can you imagine the relief I have? But I think I'm secretly blessed not to have had a girl, because if I did have a girl, I would be extremely anxious raising her.
Yeah.
And so I sit down and I tell my boys, anybody touches you, anybody, be it an uncle, be it the neighbor, be it the bus driver, be it the taxi driver, whoever it is, you come and you tell me straight away. There should be no fear in you telling me things. I've even said, even if it's a woman touching you, you come and you tell me.
Of course. Completely agree with this. And did you ever confront any of these people? Had you had a chance, even later on in age, in your life?
Because the uncle was an uncle, he remained part of the family for a very long time. He had a daughter. And the daughter is a fully grown young woman today. And I've never been able to sit with her and tell her, do you know this is what happened? Perhaps my mom has told my aunt and had conversations with her, but I've never been privy to them. And frankly speaking, I don't want to be, because I still have a separate love for my aunt who genuinely looked after me. And I have a separate hate for the uncle that she married who didn't look after me. I avoid them. And the houseboy, I don't know where he is, or whatever his story is, but I did cross his paths. Or rather, I did cross his path one day. And it took me aback like you can't imagine. I froze. I absolutely froze. Him and I landed up being in the same room, coincidentally, at a doctor's office. He had come for whatever of his own treatment, and I was there for my own treatment. And I didn't realize he was in the same room till someone's, you know, how the nurses call someone's name.
Yeah.
And that name went off and it triggered me. And I looked over and I went, oh my God, that's him.
Did he recognize you? Did he look at
No,
you?
no,
Probably
no,
not.
no.
You've grown up.
Yeah, I must have been a good 22, 23 by then. So I was not 8 anymore. And I left. I just left quietly.
That uncle of yours, or this houseboys, right? Uncle of yours, do we know if he ever did that to his own daughter? That's a high possibility. Should we not do something about this? And should we not tell women who maybe are 22, have looked back in their lives, and then they realize, because some people completely block this, and they might not even realize they were ever abused, right? Until you make mistake in life, you realize something is off with you, and then you go on a self-discovery journey, right? Don't you think we should do something about it? Or is it just let it be to the karma and we work on ourselves? What's the right thing to do here?
You are right, to a great extent. People like this should be stopped. They should be reported, whatever. As far as karma goes, the uncle died. And when I did get the news that the uncle died, I was like, good riddance to bad rubbish. I don't know how his daughter was raised or what happened, and I have thought about it, but I didn't want to do anything about it. I don't know where the houseboy is anymore.
It's not easy, but okay. Did that have any impact on your school, your grades? I mean, usually for most of us, a good escape from household situation is to go to school and make friends and, focus in your studies. Was that an escape for you or not really?
I lived 2 lives from the age of, let's say, 13 onwards.
Okay.
There were 2 very clear separations in the 2 lives that I lived. There was the smart girl, good grades, very artistic, very polite, very popular, great friends, looked up to to a great extent, well known in the school community, teacher's pet, good at sports, the quintessential good girl. And then the other side to my life was unknown, silent, falling into the wrong crowd, craving male attention in the wrong way.
So after 13, 14, 15, we're talking about?
Yeah.
High school, I think?
Yeah, that's about high school, I think. Yeah, 14, 15 years old. sometimes being cute and being the cute girl isn't always an advantage, right? But I would get noticed.
Okay.
And there was one boy in particular that I was very intrigued by. And wasn't a nice person.
Did your family knew about it? Like, did your mom know that?
To some extent, yes. But then again, I was showing up in front of my family as that life, the good girl. And my brother was more aware because we were in the same school, and my brother tried to do what my brother tried to do, which was, protect his little sister.
Yeah.
And he also gave several warnings out to my mom saying something's not right. It's not okay. She's not in the right circle. But the dynamics of a mother, her son, and her daughter at that time was tricky. We were a broken family to a great extent. There was too much else going on for us to actually know what was going on. So I kept going down my path of being with the wrong company. And that was like the next chapter of my life. Things just continued being wrong in so many ways.
So I'm assuming then you had a place where you would meet him outside of school.
Yeah, I was very social in school. Okay. And at that age, when you're in the bracket of 15, 16, 17, and I was in a co-ed school, I didn't have the right foundation. If your foundation at 8 has been demolished, then your entire value system is broken. And I took those set of values and experiences and everything else as I grew up.
Yeah.
And, I look at the way we're raising our kids. My older son is 13 and my brother's kids are 15, 16. And school friends hang out. You have your house parties and you meet up and you do all those things. So whenever there was an opportunity to have time alone with my so-called boyfriend at the time, things would happen, things would be wrong. They were not okay. But I was craving that bad attention. Does it make sense? Like, your mind gets so, the right word to use is fucked up.
Yeah.
That you're attracting and craving things that are wrong for you. This is a psychology that we get trapped in. We keep saying it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And we're not able to pull ourselves out of the situation.
I would like to ask you this question because we're obviously, I would like to guide also some young girls, right, that were maybe at that age,
I also think the issue here is that I was allowing it to happen. So it's not okay to victimize myself, to say, it was done to me.
Yeah.
So I want to be fair about that reality.
But hold on, before you go on, if you're saying it was both, but you were in a relationship with him, right? So was that not something mutually that was happening at the time, or was it was his nature to abuse? Oh, you don't remember him, and that's okay too. But I'm just trying to understand, if you're in a relationship, why did he have a need to do that?
I think the difference here was that I would say no this time.
Okay.
But I would also get pressured into it.
Okay, fair enough.
The 8-year-old wasn't able to say no because of fear. But I also think I had a lot of fear, even though it was a titled relationship, which was honestly not really a relationship because he had several other girlfriends on the side too. And I constantly lived under this weight where I was struggling with what I wanted and what I didn't want, what I wanted and what I didn't want. And who knows what goes on in the mind of a teenager. You know, there is a lot of peer pressure around. And if you don't have that solid base to go back to, no one is validating to you whether something is right or something is wrong. So even if I would say, no, this doesn't feel right, I wasn't being assertive enough to say, no, get your hands off me. This is not okay. We're not going to do this again. And you don't have the right to raise your hands on me.
I understand.
I think I was in this place of submission and fear because I was also told many times, if you don't do this, or if you do that, I'm going to make sure that I send the police to your house. Or I'm going to make sure that this happens to you in school. Whether this person really could or could not, my naive brain at that point believed it and said, no. You can't do this. And my family was not completely oblivious to what was happening. They were aware, but they didn't realize the extent to which things were damaging me. Or let me rephrase that, the extent to which I was allowing things to damage me. I take a lot of responsibility, even today, for sitting back and saying, this is okay. This is how it's meant to be. And if there's anything I could change about my childhood, it would be this. Where are the boundaries? When do you say no? When do you say when something's enough? When do you walk away? Didn't know how to. And if there was a mother or a father or a safe space that was whispering into my ears, if there was open conversation in my home, if I felt close enough to my mom to say, Mom, this is happening in my life, then I probably would have that ability to push away the things that were not right. And this is where I feel like I raised myself. And I didn't get it right.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
How did you get out of this relationship?
This saga, as I called it, continued for a few years. I left town. I went off to get my higher education, and I went to some of the best art schools and universities that you can imagine, because my mom's single mission was to make sure that my kids go to outstanding colleges, universities, and whatever. So I left and went off to the UK, and then after that I went off to the US. And that relationship followed me. I wasn't in the relationship and I wasn't interested in it anymore.
Okay.
But, school friends stay in touch.
Okay.
And people know where people go. And this person found out where I was in the US and happened to be in the US at the same time. And I allowed a conversation to happen. And then I allowed reconnection to happen. When I should have really shut the door, I wasn't able to. The thing I go through a lot is fear of rejection.
Okay.
And loss of, what is that they call it? It's not fear of rejection, it's slipping me right now.
Abandonment?
Abandonment. That's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The fear of abandonment is super active in my body. Even today, I'm working on it. And even that relationship to me was like, maybe things have got better, or maybe I should give him another chance, so on and so forth. And he reappears in my life, thankfully, for a very short sprint. But it was damaging. Absolutely damaging, because That person never improved or got any better. He just got way worse. And this time the difference was I was much older. I was 22.
Okay.
And I made observations and I said, this person has a drinking problem.
Okay.
This person's values have disintegrated more over time. And when I chose to stand up for myself, and I literally said, no more. Get out of my life. I'm not interested in any connection or relationship with you anymore. Leave. That is when I got attacked. Because a drunk person in front of me was not having any of it. They were used to submission. They were used to someone who was weaker. They were used to treating me in a certain way. And the attack was quite ferocious. It was deadly to a great extent. And I got saved. I really did get saved. I always say there's a guardian angel looking over me, and that's my biological dad that passed away when I was 8. Police stepped in, neighbors stepped in.
This was in US?
It was in the US, yeah. I had just started a new university in the US.
Okay. And it was in a house?
It was in my apartment.
In your apartment?
Yeah. The biggest mistake I had was letting evil back in through the doors.
Yeah.
But I smelt evil all over it. And it was domestic violence at its best. That is exactly what happened. There was a bottle of alcohol that was smashed on my head.
Okay.
I was being pinned to the floor. He had one clear intention: kill her.
Just because you said no?
Yeah. There was rage in his body. And I'm a fairly petite woman, as you can see.
Yeah.
I couldn't physically stand up for myself. There was no way.
Yeah.
I was pinned to the floor. I was punched, bruised, damaged. I was using my voice as much as I could, screaming for help. But every time I screamed for help louder, I was getting strangled more. I think the most terrifying thing about that attack was when the cord, the electric cord to a vacuum cleaner, was used to effectively strangle me to death. And in that moment is when the police, which in the United States is very efficient, and nobody was going to have domestic violence. It's not acceptable there in that country anymore. That's when the police got into the apartment in time, arrested him, saved me. I was taken to the hospital. All kinds of CT scans and tests, and I think I was there for 3 or 4 days. I was completely alone. I had just arrived in the United States, and my parents had no idea that was happening.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, did you not ask for help from, I mean, you must have called them just to tell them that this happened to me, or, because they knew the boy, right?
They knew of him, but they were hoping, because there was a 6-year gap between me traveling abroad and doing my studies and really excelling.
Gap.
Yeah. My best friend that I was talking to you about earlier, she and I lived in the same apartment. This happened, she was traveling. But she's actually the brave one who picked up the phone and called my mom and said, this has happened. What I needed was intervention. I hated my friend for doing it, because I was again living that version of my life where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in shit and I'm going to find my own way out.
Yeah.
But what I really needed was intervention. And everything changed in my life. everything. When my mom finally got remarried, I think she was, I want to say she remarried at 45 or 46. I'm not clear of her age. But she remarried, and that resulted in my stepdad,
Okay.
who completely rewrote the chapters of my life.
Where is he? I always ask this, but where is he from?
India also.
Okay.
Yeah. And the male figure that I didn't have growing up, or that all little girls look up to their father. They have an unspoken admiration. They're daddy's girls. I didn't have that growing up at all, up until the age of 22. And when the right man walked into my mom's life, who then walked into my life, I became his daughter. An absolutely outstanding human being. Anyone that can open their hearts to someone else's child and take them in as their own child, that's a very rare quality to find these days. It really is. And the hours and the days and the months and the years that I spent under the right influence of him, watching the relationship he had with my mom, healthy, kind, sweet, mature, the brain suddenly got rewired to, oh, this is what love is. This is what a healthy relationship is about. And I slowly started seeing the difference of what my version of love is. And he became my guiding star. And I literally unpeeled the layers of who I was now at 22. And I put my pieces back together. And not only was he there for me as I was having a difficult time, but he became a great resource to my mom, helping her, listening to her, because which parent, which mother is able to watch their child consistently be broken, emotionally, physically? How? It's a painful reality for any mother to watch. If things like this happened to my child, I would be devastated. And he became a very solid figure to both of us women in the family. And my brother, who was now a much older boy as well, now a man actually, also accepted him and took him in with a little bit of resistance, which is understandable. But the story was being rewritten.
Let me ask you also, I know we're talking about you, but I would like to know, how was the impact of all this on your brother?
Thank you for bringing my brother into this, because he is a very important part of my life. And the young boy at 11 who lost his father, who tried to warn my mom, who tried to warn me, who tried to put up all the red flags to say, this is not right, things are not going right, was shut down quite a lot because he was young. When things would go wrong, he would be my first call. Hey, I've messed up, or things have gone wrong and I need your help. And he'd always be like, what have you done again? I always say I'm the black sheep of our little family. My brothers walked the straight path, got great qualifications, studied hard, run several businesses, got married, has a healthy family, has great kids. He turned out all right, and I turned out all wrong, which is not really true, but that's the shadow that I honestly live under.
Fair.
And my brother jokes, and he's like, now what have you done? And he tries to, even today, put me on the right path, but there's some relationships that will always be, I don't think you're right. I'm not going to listen to you. I don't agree with you. So I'm not saying I have an unhealthy relationship with my brother. I just have a relationship where the two of us are so different, so radically different to each other, that I will always be this person and he will always be that person.
So you mentioned, this happened to you in the United States. So did you continue your schooling there, or did you choose to come back and stay with family since, you had a new father figure also back home?
I came back after the incident.
Okay.
And I came home for some time and started the work on myself. It was hypnotherapy, psychologists, whatever resources were available at that time. I did it all and started reforming myself. And it wasn't like a magic button where I was like, yay, I'm going to rework everything in my life and, have a clean, clear life. Absolutely not. It was like the beginning of the other chapter of my life. And then I started getting involved with mature men, nice men, good men, but I still needed time to find my way out. The need to have a relationship because of the fear of abandonment was quite high, even then.
Oh, I would like to understand that. So how is that correlated? So when you have a fear of abandonment, you always want to be in a relationship? Is that what it is?
I think there's a need for validation that comes first.
A need for validation, okay.
I only feel valued or valuable, and I only have self-esteem if there is someone else to validate how great I am. This is where things break down, because I wasn't able to turn to myself to say I am enough, or that my cup is full, or I don't need anybody. The inner strength that a lot of women are fighting for today, and the I am independent, is not easy to find. It's not easy to acquire either. And for me, the fear of abandonment is an old story, because obviously I lost my dad at a young age, and then I went through an abusive childhood. Last year, at some point, I actually got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Because I've gone through, art therapy training and understood and learned a bit of psychology, all these terminologies had become familiar to me. You've got this disorder, you've got that disorder, you're mentally this way or mentally that way. And not to put any of them down, they are real. People do have mental health issues.
No.
And I go to my very trusted psychiatrist, and we sat down together and we did a few tests and a few conversations. And the process of discovery was long, but he safely diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder.
Could you tell me what that is? I know what it is, but a lot of people probably don't. So if you can give me a summary of what that is.
In very simple words, it is a heightened fear of abandonment.
Okay.
It's where your worth has been decided by external forces. Personally, the things that led me to this diagnosis is typical scenarios like the death of a parent very early, sexual abuse, rocky, unstable home environments. What else? Certain impulsiveness to life. So these are the things that led me to this diagnosis. For each person, it's different, and I cannot speak on behalf of anybody else. So when I got diagnosed, the first thing I did was like, what does that mean? Sounds big, sounds complicated, can be, mixed up with a lot of other mental disorders like bipolar, but they're different. There's similarities, but they're very, very different. So borderline personality disorder purely is not feeling whole and worthy in yourself. And obviously, like anybody else, I Googled up and started my research because I wanted to know more about myself. And the one book that really resonated with me, and I read cover to cover, was I Hate You, But Don't Leave.
Okay, that's resonates to a lot of your story.
Yeah. Where it was like I kept clinging on to the wrong personalities. I kept attracting, wanting, and then clinging on to them, fully afraid that they're going to walk out the door and I'm going to be left with fear of abandonment and the feeling of rejection that comes with abandonment. And I slowly uncovered what was happening within me. And that's, I think, when the real work started. Understanding why you do something is the first step to trying to reform behaviors or patterns or situations.
And what did the therapist then recommend to you as an exercises, or how do you get out of this, or is this something that you have to live with?
The thing with borderline personality disorder is that with age, you actually learn how to sit with it better. So what my psychiatrist said to me is that I've always had it all along from a young age. Every incident that happened impacted on my well-being, and I've always had it and struggled with it, but it just doesn't get officially diagnosed. But when I have been through clinical depression in my younger years as well, I have been on medication for a few months at a time. And this time, for whatever life reasons and for all that was happening to me and what I was going through, I feel like I reached the highest peak of anxiety and depression and borderline personality disorder. And I was all for it. You kind of name it, I was going through it. It was like a proper full system breakdown. And it was not easy to find the right medication either. You have to go through a process of what drug is really going to do the right chemical shift for you. So I was going through a few different types and versions, all with, the assistance of my psychiatrist. I was in his office every month, figuring things out. And then finally the right formulas, so to speak, worked, and I started feeling alive again. I am someone who does believe in asking for help and taking the help. What I was not able to do as a younger child, raise my hand and say, I need help, I very quickly mastered the art of asking for help. I started calling my parents and saying, I'm not doing okay. I need to go. I need to seek psychology or psychiatry, life coaches, whatever you want to call it, everything. And when I started asking for help, even from friends, I felt heard. And that there was a village that kind of put me back together. And I've had many good souls. I am blessed to have some solid friendships around me, solid family around me that have been there to pick me up and put me back together.
And multiple times you did mention your kids in United States, right? 2 boys, from what I recall now. Why are you not with them? Do you want to share a little bit on that? I'm assuming there was some impact of obviously all this into perhaps your relationship. So could you maybe dive deep into that as well?
Yeah. As I was discovering myself from the age of 22 and onwards, I I finally did get married at the age of 29.
That's early, no? What do you think?
Subjective.
Yeah.
Now I sit back and go, 29 was a little bit early, especially in my case, because I was still learning, discovering, unfolding.
Yeah.
But by Indian standards, 29
By
is
Indian
also a
standard,
little bit late.
you're late. Yeah. But I mean, by then you're expired in Indian standards, so for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
So it was a love marriage.
Oh, nice.
With an Indian.
Okay.
But Hindu. And in our family, we are a concoction of every religion you can imagine. We've got it all.
Beautiful.
So there wasn't any issues about religion or community or caste or any of those typical Indian stories.
Yeah.
Love marriage, met through common friends, hit it off really well. And he's an absolutely wonderful man. Great man, great values, lot of integrity, lot of love, lot of respect. But we were not good for each other.
Oh.
Two good people, but not necessarily good for each other. And we had very typical clashes, what all young marriages go through. The ego of each person comes into play, and the kids come into play, and then we're exhausted raising the children. And there was a lot that happened in that marriage, but I chose to step out. After 7 years of knowing him, I knew in my heart I wasn't in the right place. And I also knew that I was destroying him to a great extent. And he was destroying me to a great extent. And it all happened very fast. The separation, the decisions. I was not in a mentally healthy space of mind. I had a lot on my shoulders that weighed me down tremendously. And I wasn't communicating. I was suffering quietly when it was my responsibility to step up and sit down with my husband at that time and say, look, these things are really not working out for me. I need your support here. I need this to happen. I was not communicating. I just shut down. And we worked in the same business together.
What was the business?
It was my business of a creative and marketing agency.
Very nice.
And the children came along, and then he joined my business, and then we became, partners essentially to each other. But there was still just a lot of, I crumbled under the stress of the business and the marriage. I gave birth to my child, my first child. It was a C-section. I was back at work within 3 hours.
What?
At the computer, designing, working with clients. I was essentially the head of the company. It was my company. I had to show up for clients because not showing up for clients would mean we're not making money.
Okay. So, and he wasn't working at the time?
He was working at different jobs.
Okay.
But it was a struggle for him as well. Things were not falling into place for him.
Okay.
And that's where the decision was, why don't you come and work in my company, and then we can kind of partner up and pull this thing together. And when the kids came into the picture, it made more sense at that time, where it was like, okay, you can step in and help me juggle the business, and I will have some time to be a mom. But the formula wasn't working. He had more time to be a father, and I got caught up in project deliveries, project design. I was building the business at that time. I didn't have many employees. It was just chaotic. My body was tired, and I went into postpartum depression as well. Got out of that, and then the second child came along, which was a conscious decision because I always wanted for my first child to have a sibling. For me, it's really important that you have someone that you can turn to, a brother or a sister. A second child came along and we were still married by then, and I think we managed to stay married for another couple of years. And then the inner voices got a lot louder.
Yeah. What is postpartum depression? I hear that often. I know what it is again, but for people to understand, how do you feel when that happens, and how did you get out of it?
For me personally, my journey with it was my child was born. I had this beautiful little boy, and it took me a few hours in the hospital to be able to hold my baby and bring him close to me. And then they would take the baby away from me and put them in the nursery, and I found that very relaxing. And then they would bring the baby back to me and say, now feed the baby. And then there would be pumps on me, and I am just going, I am out of my skin. I don't know who I am. I haven't connected with my child. It took me 9 months after my child was born to actually have the first feeling of, I love you. I acknowledge that you are mine. And I precisely remember that moment when I was sitting having brunch somewhere in some restaurant, and I looked over at my baby in the stroller and I went, oh, you're rather beautiful. You're really cute. And for that 9 months when I was in postpartum depression, who helped me? My stepfather again. He would come see me every morning, and I would tell him very honestly, I live on the 5th floor, and I really visualize myself jumping off the 5th floor. This is what I want to do. And I lived in that for months. My husband couldn't understand it. How can he? I was in it myself. I couldn't understand the C-section, the recovery period. My husband was in the business now. Projects were coming in. That's the beauty of it all. Clients, projects, work was coming in, but I had to deliver. Not the child.
Yeah.
I had to deliver the projects.
The project. Oof.
And I was working countless hours, back to back to back. I even remember the project that used to keep me up till 4 a.m. And I've got this baby in the house crying and waking up for meals. I'd completely given up on breastfeeding after 3 months. I said to hell with it. And even though my mom lives in the same city as I do,
Yeah.
she was there, she was helpful, but even she struggled with raising a baby. It was difficult for her to be that support for me. So I felt quite alone and isolated, and it's a horrible thing to say. And one day my son's going to listen to this, but I didn't want to have a baby at that time in my life. It was too soon for me. I wasn't ready for it.
So the first one, was it an oops moment?
It was an oops moment. Yeah. I was 30 years old. So it was an oops moment, and I just went with it. What can you do? You're married, got pregnant, have the baby. But I found my way out. I chose to stay back in Dubai. My husband at the time chose to go back to the US because he is American and his family lives in America. And the divorce broke both of us to a great extent. But I think it broke him more than it broke me because he didn't see it coming.
He didn't see it coming.
Not at all.
Okay, I would like to talk about that one. You basically just one day told him that I want a divorce, and he didn't have a say in it?
He had a say, and he tried to say.
Okay.
And he was wiser and more stable and more able than I was at that point. But I was very clear in my mind. I think I was in a state of flight. But at that same point, I think I was thinking very clearly. And I knew I had reached the end of that road. So I didn't have doubts on whether I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing, surprisingly. I knew that the divorce was absolutely right for me. I wasn't being present in my relationship anymore. I wasn't showing up for it. I wasn't able to show up for my children. I was in a very deep state of depression back then. And there were also distractions around me. And when your eyes begin to wander and you're looking for an escape and you don't feel, or rather you feel suffocated in a relationship, then you're looking anywhere and everywhere for an out. And I was still growing up. I still am growing up, but I was still in that stage of my life where I was just beginning to bloom and understand myself and rediscover myself. And I hate to say this, but I think I rushed into the marriage and I married a checklist. Everything looks great. The families accepted him. He's a wonderful human being. Nothing can go wrong. He is a diamond compared to the trash that I had before. And so everything felt so right to me at the age of 28, 29 when I did get married. But I hadn't evolved yet. And I was still learning and figuring it out. And I think the marriage was, I don't want to say it was a mistake because it really wasn't. It was just another chapter of my life that taught me certain things.
Majority of these tasks, naturally or unfortunately, whatever you want to call it, falls into the women. Have you also experienced that in that sense? And if you today look back into that marriage life of yours, right, what would you have done differently?
I would have communicated better. That was my error. If I didn't want to go to work and if I wanted to stay home and raise my babies, I never verbalized and said, I really want a break right now. I don't want to run this business. I don't want to do this project. I never verbalized, can you leave the business and can you go get a job on the outside so that we have a regular paycheck? I went through what I went through on my own, but it was my mistake not to voice what I needed. We make this mistake where we imagine the other person is in our brain and understands everything that's going on. And I think the baby also, the oops moment, the baby came far too early. We got married the same year, had the baby the same year. And so we as individuals didn't actually have our time to
Live together, just
to understand what's going on. It was bang, bang, impact, impact, impact. Lose a job, get a job, start a business, don't start a business, move to the office from here to there. Baby's arrived, bug the baby, feed the baby, do something with the baby. It was like crazy was out of control for me.
yeah.
And I just went into, I think both of us went into, now we're a family, we gotta make things work. I needed to talk more, but I also needed to listen more because my partner was not sharing with me either.
Okay.
The two-way communication system or stream had failed.
How can we make that work? Just what do you think in a healthy marriage? What would a good communication look like in your perspective, since you've gone through it?
I'm in a relationship again today.
Okay.
And again, not all smooth sailing. We're in therapy every week. We were together for a few years, then we broke up, and then we got back together.
Okay.
So I honestly wish I knew what healthy communication looks like, because I'm learning. I'm still learning as I go along. My therapist has lots of great suggestions.
Okay.
But I think if I had to very simply understand this, more than talking, it's about listening. If your partner shows up and says XYZ, this, and the other, and whatever it is, we tend to react faster with our words than actually listening empathetically with what has been said. And I always believe this. This is what I do in the work as a creative therapist, is you have to listen with all your senses. You have to listen with your eyes. You have to listen with your ears. You have to listen with your body. You have to listen with everything you've got. And as you get comfortable in a relationship, once honeymoon phase is done, you tend to stop listening with eagerness and empathy.
That's true.
You know, when you first meet somebody and you have that first 6 months together, you're so eager to listen and learn about the other person.
Yeah.
And then you fall into that state of knowing, convenience, comfort, whatever you want to call it.
You know, but the more, like I have friends from, 15 plus years, and sometimes they tell me something and I just listen to it quickly, but like don't pay attention as much as I would if it's a new friendship. There's a difference. So now I can relate to this one. Yeah. Interesting.
And I'm trying to listen more carefully.
Yeah.
To understand more carefully.
So you know where that comes from? Not taking each other for granted. If you always have that on top of your mind, not to take the other person for granted, you listen.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's also comes down to holding space for people.
Yeah. Yeah, being mindful for it.
Yeah. But not taking people for granted.
Yeah.
Not assuming that they're always going to be there.
Yes. Yes, especially in the world we live now in.
But we stood in for each other and said, okay, if this is really over, then it's really over. Hearts were broken. His more than mine, perhaps. But I also had my break point. Because his request was, I'm going back to the US and I'm taking the children with me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had taken so much away from him that at that point I felt like, okay, you can have the children. And that's how they live in the US with their dad, and I live here. And I felt like I was the stronger one. And I felt that I would be okay as a mom being away from my kids. And because I was the one who had the businesses and I was my own boss, I could travel up and down as much as I needed to, versus someone who has a corporate job and, has X number of days off. It was a trade, unfortunately, where he would lose everything if I didn't at least say, okay, take the kids because they're your lifeline at the moment.
It's very rare though, right? Isn't it? It's rare to see kids going with fathers rather than mothers, right? I've hardly seen that before. What did your parents say on this one?
I think everyone was silently hoping, wishing, and praying that I would also move to the United States.
Ah.
I considered it.
Okay.
Everyone hoped that we would have found a way to resolve our separation.
Yeah.
Everyone thought that I'm going through a phase and I'm not thinking right. So let's give her enough time to think about this. But any mother is going to go where their child is.
Yeah.
Didn't turn out like that for me. It just didn't. Because when I made the decision to get a divorce, I was very clear in my mind. There wasn't doubt.
And what about your kids now? When you go visit them, do they ever express that they miss you? And is there someone in your ex-husband's life also?
Now there is.
Okay.
He's taken his time. So he's got a girlfriend. I have a boyfriend. The kids have learned to balance a very unusual way of life. I go see them in the US. They come and spend holidays with me. Winter, summer, springs. They're here in Dubai. And when I'm not there, they're living their life there as well. Is it difficult on them? Of course it is. There's no doubt in it. My younger one finds it easier to express his feelings. And he has recently said to me, you know, can you guys just not live together? Can we not just be a family of 4 again?
Oh, bless him.
And, you know, he's also said, like, I will never, ever have this experience in my life, Mom. And he cries with me. He's emotional like I am. And my older one, I see him living a little like how my brother lived. You know, things have gone wrong. I need to grow up and I need to stand strong and I need to be there. So history repeats itself to a certain extent. You know, my 13-year-old is wise beyond his years. He behaves, acts, and intellectually is a 60-year-old person. A lot of pressure on a young boy.
Yeah, of course.
It's a lot of pressure.
Of course.
I'm aware of how difficult we've made the lives of our children. I feel guilty about it.
You shouldn't, though. I mean, this is something you've made a decision.
Yeah.
If I truly believe that if you were not in a mental state to take care of them, it would be just worse for them. So by you stepping out of it and taking care of yourself, giving them safe space to grow up, you know, in their own world, I think is better in hindsight.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I know the right thing is when children see two healthy parents, whether together or apart.
Then rather than them being together, going through something, and what you experienced when you were young, for example,
Yes.
when it wasn't super healthy at home,
Yes.
they were, you know, constantly arguing with each other. That's not the life either for kids to see, right?
Yeah.
But I can imagine that they're missing you, right?
They miss me.
Yeah.
And when they're here in Dubai with me for, you know, a few months at a time, they miss their dad.
Yeah.
And we're a family that's always had to learn to understand what missing somebody is. And the resilience steps in. And even if we put on happy face and, you know, get on with life and things, it is what it is. It's not the best decisions. I wish I could have protected them more, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
You're doing the best you can. But, you know, you've gone through a lot. I mean, I've met a lot of women, you know. I speak to them often, whether it's on camera, off camera. Sometimes, you know, what would you tell to them if that happened to you when you were young, right? And what would you tell them? Whether they're listening to you today, when you're 15, when they're 15, when they're 20, or in their 30s, or later on in life, right? What would you tell them?
Be vulnerable. If you accept a role of vulnerability, then what you're able to do is ask for help. And I don't think we as human beings ask for help enough. If at the age of 8, I could say, help me, or stop, listen, I need your help, I would have been heard, I would have been saved. If we can teach our children to ask for help and not feel bad asking for help, I think everything would change.
In our culture, we say, in Gujarati, I'll tell you what I hear. કોઈને હેરાન નહીં કરજે. કોઈને હેરાન નહીં કરજે. And that is what I grew up with. So I don't ask for help. I never ask for help, actually, even today. Like, you know, we're going through literally a terrible situation. I'm by myself. I have friends who, you know, they ask me, do you want to come over? Shall we pick you up? Do you want to stay over? Like, multiple people ask me that. Do you want some food? Shall we send some food? And I would rather order food than ask anyone to send me a homemade meal if I'm not feeling like cooking, because life is unstable and the last thing I want to go is in the kitchen and cook something. So I'll order food, for example, but I won't ask for help. Simple thing. Not even asking for, you know.
Yeah.
How can we change that?
This is how I change it for myself. I heard something somewhere, and the message I took away from that was, when you actually ask for help, the opposite person feels far greater. It gives them a feeling of purpose. It allows them to be there for you. It makes them feel like they are contributing to your life. And if you call me authentically and genuinely and say, I need help, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and listen and say, it's very brave of somebody to call with 3 words, I need help. Tell me that you're not going to help me.
If I was to ask Zainab today, is she healed?
No, absolutely not. I think healing, learning. About 2 or 3 years ago, I went back to a language that was very familiar to me, which is art. When I was younger as well, from, like I had mentioned, the story with my dad and coloring and drawing, I turned to art to express, but also to heal. It became my quiet, safe space. And I am not classically trained in art at all.
Okay.
If you ask me to draw a tree today, I promise you I will draw it like a 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I have had to really fight through this challenge that I have of, I'm not classically trained, I don't have skills, I don't know how to do things, versus I'm an intuitive artist and I can express very freely. And at the age of 8, I knew that I was going to be a designer, very specifically a graphic designer. And I walked up to my mom and I said, I'm going to be a designer. And she said, okay, like any 8-year-old that comes to you and says, I'm going to be an astronaut, right? You put it aside. But from the day I lost my dad, I almost felt like it was my duty to hold on to art and expression. And I went about pushing my education and my career all in the direction of art. I went to art schools in UK, I went to art schools in the US, and I stuck with it from the age of 8. And 2 or 3 years ago, like I was saying earlier, I felt that I had got so sucked into the corporate space of branding, marketing, social media, websites, and all of those things that I felt like I lost my language. Like I didn't know how to create with my bare hands anymore. And I picked up a journal and I started pouring my paints, crayons, feelings, everything into that journal. And that's when I also started my education around therapeutic arts and how to become a creative arts practitioner. So I did that course for a year or two, and I dabbled in several other education systems and methods, and it just became a full-time passion for me. Like, I just wanted to do art therapy. I wanted to learn more.
What is that? What I've heard from you, what is art therapy? But can you tell us? Like, I'm sure a lot of people never heard of art therapy before. What is that?
So the simplest way to describe it is you go for therapy.
Okay.
You go to a psychologist's office and you sit across the psychologist or the life coach, whoever it may be, and you talk.
Okay.
That is what we call talk therapy. What happens to the person who doesn't have a voice? And I don't mean that just physically. I mean that as someone's not able to actually use their words to express how they feel. That's when using art materials, whatever form it comes in, either it's clay or crayons or pastels, whatever you want to use, when you start molding or creating or using your hands to express, it almost becomes a very subconscious connection between heart, mind, and words.
Okay.
Your body tends to drone out, or your mind tends to drone out, and you fall into a state of focus where everything you're feeling tends to release on paper. Now, the difference between art therapy and an art class is, again, an art class, you go for traditional skills, learn how to draw in straight lines, whatever it may be, whatever the challenges at hand. But with art therapy, it's a space for emotional release.
Wow.
There's no judgment. You don't have to be talented. You just come in there and you use your hands to connect and create with yourself. And what happens to us as practitioners is we facilitate the space for you. We hold space for you. The same way you're holding space for me today, I would hold space for my client. Prompt them, ask a few questions, navigate them a little bit through their feelings, but essentially they are the ones leading the way. They are creating how they need to create.
Why would kids come to your sessions? I mean, when I hear the sessions, you call them therapy, right? It's a art therapy. So why would parents send their children for therapy at that young age, let's say?
Sapna, when I was 8 years old and I wasn't able to use my voice to tell people that I'm struggling and I need help, where did I turn? I turned to my art. And children from a very young age all the way up to adulthood, we all have our struggles. And if I'm going to take an 8-year-old, if I took myself to therapy when I was 8 and I sat in front of someone and they said, speak, talk to me, I would struggle. There is power in talk therapy. I'm not putting talk therapy down, but what I'm saying is some people can talk more easily than others. I work with neurodivergent children, people of determination.
Okay.
And 90% of the children I work with are nonverbal. They have autism or ADHD or various other neuro disorders. That came out wrong. Hold on. I work with neurodivergent children, people of determination, and 90% of them are nonverbal. Either they have autism or ADHD or some sort of issues, that is when art really helps them express. They're able to draw or communicate what they're not necessarily able to speak. But the misconception around art therapy also is, did you understand what that person drew? We're not magicians, so if a child draws a spider, it's not for us to decipher or say, oh, the spider meant something, or he's scared of spiders, or the spider bit him. No, the area that we create, the space, that the safe space and the trustworthy space that we create is therapeutic to begin with. And just the release of emotions and expression, even if there isn't words attached to it, that is where the benefits of art therapy come in. And somewhere along the way, my wires got crossed. But I'm definitely working on rewiring everything and getting back on track. And it will be a lifelong journey. I think healing, learning is a lifelong journey. Nobody ever stops. I still discover things about myself today. I still pull myself back and go, oops, am I continuing to make the same mistakes? So healing will continue. It has to continue. That's the only way that you can become a healthier human being, honestly, is when you continue to heal.
This conversation stayed with me for a very long time after it ended. Zainab's story is a reminder of how deeply childhood experiences can shape the way we see ourselves and the relationship we accept later in life. When someone grows up without the safety or the support they need, it becomes very difficult to recognize what healthy love or boundaries looks like. And sometimes those patterns continues for years. What struck with me the most about Zainab's journey was the moment when things slowly began to change for her. Another part of this conversation for me was discovering the role art play actually played in her healing. We often think therapy must be always through conversation. But Zainab's story reminded me that expression can take many forms. Every week, we'll be bringing you stories from women who have lived through very different journeys. Stories of struggle, stories of courage, mistakes, healing, and growth. I would like to know what stayed with you from this conversation. You can share your thoughts in the comments or send me a message. And I'll see you next week with another episode of Unfiltered.